Hey everybody, welcome to the very first episode of the Peaceful Parenting Show with Sarah Rosensweet. I'm Sarah Rosensweet, a Peaceful Parenting Coach and your host. I'm going to be here every week, and I'm going to have a topic every week that we're going to talk about. Today's topic is how to make your kids happy. A question that I'm sure we all wonder and something we all strive to do. It's definitely our big goal as parents is to raise happy kids. Of course, we also want them to be successful and kind and productive. But really, if you ask most parents, if you say, "What do you want for your kids?" and you say, most of them will say, "I just want my kids to be happy." I'm going to turn that on its head today, and I'm going to tell you why that is not a great idea to use to drive your parenting. And how it's, even though it's a great goal to have for parents, how if we let having happy kids drive our parenting decisions, it can get us into some trouble, and it doesn't make for the best parenting decisions. And also, it really sets us up to judge ourselves harshly. We can really feel like bad moms if our kids are unhappy about things, and I see that with so many of the moms that I work with. So let's talk about this for a few minutes. So why is making decisions with happy kids as your goal? How does that mess up your parenting? I see that in so many different ways. First of all, it's unrealistic to have your kids be happy all the time, and it's also undesirable. Really, our full human lives and our human potential depends on like a full range of emotions and experiences. As adults, we're going to have ups and downs and challenges and difficulties, and we have to be able to face those things. And also, having highs and lows in life really makes your life richer. So it's not a realistic expectation to have your kids be happy all the time, and it really robs them of living their life to the fullest potential that they can live it. Secondly, if you expect that your kids are happy all the time and you base your parenting on trying for that, it gets in the way of resilience. What we tend to do if we're trying to make our kids happy is remove hardship from their lives, make things easier, maybe help them too much or not put them into challenging situations, let them avoid things that are difficult. All of these things really stop kids from being resilient. People today complain so much about about helicopter parents and about the millennials, and I think what really happened there was that millennials parents didn't want to raise their kids the same way they'd been raised, in an authoritarian way. So they they knew that felt bad, and they didn't want their kids to be unhappy the way they were unhappy. But what happened was they failed to, and we're going to talk a bit more about setting limits also, but they wanted to make life easier for their kids. They wanted them to have good experiences, and they would go to great lengths. Bad grade on a test, I'll call the teacher. Didn't do your science project, I'll do it for you. I don't want you to get a bad grade. Just really getting in there and trying to save kids from hardship because they want them to be happy. Great goal for sure, happy kids, but the way to do that is not to prevent hardship in their lives, because if you don't have the experience of overcoming hardship, and that can start with very small things like you can't have another cookie, or you can't climb the bookshelf, or you can't play with mom's iPhone. If we don't start with those small things, the bigger things, not preparing for school and having to face the consequences the next day, or getting a bad mark on a test, or not getting into the college that you wanted, you won't be prepared for any of those things if your parents didn't help you along the way with, helping you out with the hardship. And I'm not saying just let your kids fail. I'm saying make sure that they have the support they need to succeed and do hard things. So that's one of the, so far we've talked about that having happy kids is both unrealistic and undesirable, because it's impossible, and they miss out on a lot in life without that full range of human emotions. It also gets in the way of creating resilience if you're just trying to pave the way for your kids and smooth things along. And it also, the third thing I want to say is it gets in the way of them developing emotional intelligence. So much of the time we are afraid of our kids' difficult feelings, and we just want them to be happy. So we try to fix things. We try to solve, we say that your child comes home from school and their friends didn't play with them on the playground. Instead of letting them sit with those difficult emotions of, sadness and grief and rejection, and offering empathy for them in those difficult emotions, we're tempted to say, oh, you can play with so-and-so tomorrow, or do you want me to talk to their mom? Or, we jump in with these solutions for them, and what they really need is just to sit with their feelings, to process those feelings with a warm and compassionate parent who says says something like, I know it must have been so sad when they were mean to you, and would you like a hug, and come here, let's have a cuddle about it, and you can tell me about it. I remember when I was a kid and that would happen to me, it would make me feel so sad too. And you're really just holding the space for your kids when they are having a hard time, instead of rushing in to try and fix it or make everything better or tell them to stop feeling that way, because you want them to be happy. You want them to have positive feelings. We really have to just make room for all of their feelings, not just their happy ones. So that's how emotional resilience is created. Kids become emotionally resilient when they have the experience of somebody else holding space for them in the hard times, helping them feel those feelings, process them, and know that they're going to be okay on the other side. And a calm parent who's compassionate and empathetic lets them know that they are going to be okay. It's not an emergency. The big feelings are not an emergency. My fourth point to this is that day-to-day life becomes really difficult if you're trying to keep your kids happy all the time. We might avoid setting limits. So you have an hour with your child between daycare and bedtime, and you don't want that hour to be spent with your kid crying and unhappy about, no treats, or no other cookie, or you can't watch the show or something. So we tend to give kids what we think they want, what we think will make them happy. Or you don't want this dinner? Okay, I'll make you this dinner. Or you don't want, you don't want daddy, you want mommy? Okay, well, we'll do that because we want you to be happy. But really, when you are going to great lengths to avoid setting limits, that interferes with what I was talking about before, with developing resilience and the emotional intelligence and resilience, and knowing they're going to be okay. But it also makes life feel like one big walking on eggshells, right? If you're always afraid of making your kid unhappy, so you're doing a song and dance all the time to try and make them happy. I also see with a lot of parents that when they are trying to make their kids happy, they will go to great lengths to negotiate, try to explain and negotiate, because they feel like if she just understands why she can't have another show, or if he just understands why we can't go to the playground after dinner, then they'll be okay with it and they'll be happy. And so we spend a lot of time convincing and negotiating and trying to get our child on side, when really what we need to do is be okay with them being unhappy about a limit that we've set. I can't tell you how many times I said to my kids when they were growing up, I know, it would be easier for me to say yes right now to X, Y, or Z, but I love you enough to say no. And I don't mind if you think that I'm mean, and I don't mind if you think that I'm a bad mom. I know this is the right decision, and I love you enough to say no. And I think they really got that and could appreciate that, yeah, it'd be easier to say unlimited, screen, sugar, stay up as late as you want, don't have any of those limits. And it is harder to set limits. It is harder when your child is unhappy with you, but it's really okay. And to be a great mom, you really have to be okay with your child being unhappy with you sometimes, because that's what happens when you have to set limits. Which brings me to wrapping this all back around in that I see so many moms who, all of these things that I've said about, all the reasons why making your child happy isn't a great goal of parenting in the day-to-day. We really feel in our culture that being a good parent means your kids are happy. We get all these messages like, smiling children, you must be a great mom, and, everything's a breeze, you must be a great mom. And if you're struggling because you have to set limits, and you're struggling because your child is having a hard time in school, and you have to, really support them through that challenge so that they get resilient, or if you're struggling because your child has big feelings and they're, coming home and crying about certain things, And what we want to do is fix that all and wrap it all up in a bow so that we can say, look, world, my kid's happy, like I'm a great mom. But I want you to separate those two ideas. You are a great parent just by showing up and bringing your empathy and being patient as much as you can in the day-to-day. And being the good enough mom is good enough. That was a famous psychologist, I think in the 50s, who said what kids need is the good enough mom. So you're a great mom if you show up every day and you do your best and you try and support your kids and be patient and loving and connect with them. That's really what they need. And you do need to set limits so that they learn resilience and they learn how to handle hardship when they're older, and they develop emotional intelligence, and that their feelings won't swamp them, and that the day-to-day is easier. You're not walking on eggshells because you're afraid that your kids are going to melt down over a limit you've set. So I just want to leave you with that. The next time you hear I hate you, you're the meanest mommy in the world, you can just say, I hear how upset you are, sweetheart, and I love you no matter what. And just know in your heart that it's okay if your kids are unhappy with you. It doesn't mean that you're not a great parent. And just, take that little nugget away, knowing that, an unhappy child can be a child who's learning to regulate themselves and their emotions and navigate the world around them, and also really know that you love them enough to say no. That's really super important. You love them enough to do the hard choices that sometimes it takes to be a great parent. If you would like to learn more about this approach or connect with me, I have a Facebook group, Peaceful Parenting with Sarah Rosensweet. I will put a link to that under this video, or actually I'll put it in the description. Please join my Facebook group if you'd like to learn more about this approach, or you can visit my website, which is sararosensweet.com. I will link to both of those. And thank you for being here for the first episode of Peaceful Parenting with Sarah Rosensweet. And have a great rest of the day. Thanks a lot. Bye.